all these different agencies and branches of government started investigating and coming after our company.
We've increased disinformation research.
And we ended the Wild West online.
Flagged by FBI, flagged by DHS. We start to think, there's an awful lot of these. What does that mean?
After talking to Dr. Ebright, I now understand why Dr. Fauci, Francis Collins, and the rest of the pandemic industrial complex were so desperate to cover up the origins of COVID.
It is inconceivable that I was trying to cover up the possibility of a lab leak.
Millions and millions of people have died. Economies have been devastated. Vulnerable people have been hurt by this mad science experiment.
They were rewarded precisely because they weren't asking questions.
You're also a bit of a dinosaur, if you will, because you're an actual journalist. There aren't that many of them anymore, and reporters have become useful idiots.
It's worse than that. I think they're essentially proxies for the national security apparatus. All of media went through this shift.
It was a fake story.
The Trump campaign colluded with Russia.
It was particularly the Russiagate story. Objective journalism had to go out the window.
A U.S.-financed accident that came out of Wuhan.
Believing the science.
Operation Mockingbird on steroids.
When we looked at these censorship programs, we realized they were trying to re-engineer how people thought. We were trying to figure out how can something be factual but also disinformation at the same time.
You start releasing the Twitter files reports. You're called to testify before Jim Jordan's committee, and something happened to you that day back home.
They were irrefutable. It's already a lost cause in Europe. This is crazy. This is exactly what the media is not for. Complete corruption.
It's time to pull back the curtain on the cover-up.
Good morning. Happy Friday, all. I hope you guys are having a really fantastic morning. It's early still, but hey, it's Friday. How can you go wrong, right? I'm Tabitha Hassell, of course, with Tabs on Tap. Happy Friday. Man, I'm so happy it's a Friday. You have no idea. It's going to be a really beautiful weekend. I know I plan on spending all of my time out in the garden, trying to catch up, running to the grocery store, lots of errands. It's been so hot that I haven't really wanted to do as much. Of course, I've been so darn busy. That doesn't help. Good morning, Linda. Good morning, Karen. Hopefully you two are having a good morning. And I don't know what you guys have planned this weekend, but again, it's supposed to be a really beautiful weekend, very moderate temperatures. And, I was thinking about this last night. I don't know if you guys saw any of my posts on Facebook, but I am not a fall person. I'm not a winter person. I love spring and I love summer. And those really hot days that most people hate, are some of the days I like the best. I just love the heat and I love the sun and the water and all those really nice summery things. And I remember being a kid and my parents telling me, the older you get, time goes by in the blink of an eye. And boy, isn't that the truth. It's more, and it is, I wish if I could have any advice for any young people, it would definitely be to slow down, even though when you're young, time seems to move very slowly at times. Slow down and enjoy it. Because boy, these days, I can't even believe is today. I think today's the first. Is today the first? Yeah, August 1st. How does that even happen? Today is August 1st. I don't even feel like it should be June yet. And all of a sudden we're flung into August. I don't know about the rest of you, but man, it came around slow for me. Good morning, Larry. Good morning, Sherry. Good morning, Joe. Hopefully you guys also having a good Friday. But isn't it the truth that the older we get, the faster time flies? I can remember being a kid and the summer would go by so slowly. So slowly. It seemed like forever when we were on that, summer break, which was so nice for school. And I can remember a friend of mine at that time, a neighbor, a guy who was like one of my best friends who lived a couple houses down from me. He would leave every summer and to go to Michigan. Of course, I grew up in the Chicago area. He would go to Michigan for like 2 weeks to visit family. And I remember when he was gone, those were the longest 2 weeks ever because we hung out all the time. And so for those 2 weeks, I was like bored out of my mind. But it felt like an eternity. And then school would start and it would feel like an eternity till it came around to summer break again. Man, it's crazy. Karen, your birthday is Sunday. Happy birthday, Karen. Larry says, I love the fall. Larry, most people do love the fall. Yesterday, I was like in a little bit of a panic attack because it yesterday felt like such a fall day. It was dreary, it was cloudy, drizzling a little bit. It just had that fall feeling, and I don't like anything fall. I don't like not that I don't like apple cider, but I don't like the whole things that go with it. And I think it's because your things are slowing down. It's getting darker. The days are shorter. And you're thinking about that hibernation period where, all of a sudden you're going to go dormant. Everything, the green, pretty green goes away if you're living here in the Midwest. And I was like having a panic attack yesterday over it. Like, oh my God, how did this happen? I missed the whole summer. It's going to be fall, winter before we know it. God, I sure hope I'm around to see next spring and summer. Lori says, why is that a thing? I was always told the older you get, the faster it goes. Such truth in that. Lori, I don't know. I would love to see like a research project, talk about why time does seem like it moves so much faster when you get older. And it does seem like I read something about that once a long time ago, but I don't recall the details. Sherry, I think it's because we have to pay bills that come monthly and it makes time go by quick. Well, that could be. That could be because you do kind of sometimes break up your time frame about, when you pay your bills, and a lot of people do that. And good morning, Kim. And Karen, hope you have a good birthday weekend. Sherry says, I went doom when the first hickory nut fell. I know. I've got hickory nuts falling all over the yard, and it looks like I'm going to have a really good crop of pecans this year as well. Last year, my pecan tree, I had a huge pecan tree. I have a lot of pecan trees, but only one pecan tree has really big pecans. And it's real close to the back porch. And so the year before last, I went out there and I collected, it was my first fall here, a bazillion, literally, it was like 300 pounds of pecans that came off this tree. And I can see all the pecans up there now, and I'm hoping they get as large as those did. But we have like shell bark, shag bark, all these different nuts, and black walnuts are falling. I've collected a few black walnuts. Last year, I had tubs of black walnuts, tubs. And it's like, I don't even know what to do with them. They're so difficult to deal with. But I've got to get out this weekend and start picking up those black walnuts because they will be all over the yard if I don't get out there and pick them up. And Mandy, I think it's because we have experienced so many seasons, holidays, they don't seem new to us. Yeah, it's possible they don't seem new to us anymore. That could be. We've gone through the cycle so many times, I guess. And Lori El Monstero this weekend, always fun. Whether it be a nice weather, the helicopter will fly. Oh yeah, that'll be really nice, Lori. I've not seen El Monstero live before. Linda, yesterday my friend said it feels like fall. I said, fake fall. It is fake fall. Summer will be back. I'd enjoy fall more if winter didn't follow. Same with me, Linda. I think I would like fall a little bit better if winter wasn't behind. But it's like for me, I don't like all those dreary colors, the browns and the golds and the yellows. And I like the greens and the pinks and the reds and the pretty summer vibrant colors. And then pretty soon everything's going to be apple cider flavored, right? Apple cider, everything, pumpkin spice, everything. I wish we'd just come out maybe with some new fall colors and fall decorations. Every fall I try to find some bright, pretty flowers, but it's all those old dreary mums. And Sherry says, I used to make my Christmas money from walnuts. Really, Sherry? I would have never thought that. I have all these pecans, like I said, and all these other hickory nuts and all these black walnuts, and I have no idea what to do with them. If I thought somebody would buy them, I would gladly sell them. Sherry says that 5 inches of snow last year was all it took for me to despise winter. I know, and I live so far away from where I work that in the winter time I have such a long drive through all types of hazardous types of weather. Last year I didn't think our winter got too bad, and I hope this year is the same. But there was a period of time, if you guys recall, this past winter where it seemed like we had snow on the ground for a really long time, which does not usually happen. When I lived in the Chicago area, of course, it snows at the beginning of winter, and that snows there until spring. That's different. I got used to it there, but here I expect something different. Good morning, Rob. And Sherry says, oh gosh, did you say 15 inches of snow? Yes. Yes, I remember. It was terrible. Anyway, lots to talk about today. Lots to talk about today. Just a reminder, I will not have a show on Monday or Wednesday. I don't see any reason why I won't on Tuesday. Monday, I have testing done. I've got to go with a call a mapping CT scan where you go in and they use us. They map everything out. I don't think I have to get any more biopsies. I don't know, but they're going to do the mapping for a biopsy. So that way, when you go in, you get the CT scan of my chest area. Then when they use the robot to go in and do biopsies, the robot kind of like draws a roadmap for that robot. Now, I've got to go and get the testing done on Monday, but then my follow-up appointments are on Tuesday. And so I won't be here Monday or Tuesday. I'm sorry, Monday or Wednesday, I will not be here. Tuesday, I do expect to be here. I think things are going good, relatively good. So we will see what happens. I'll have a big story to tell on Thursday. Good morning, Michelle. Lots to talk about. So if you guys saw that intro video, the Blaze talking about Free People, a new series they have, talking about Operation Mockingbird. And, Tulsi Gabbard just came out and said, Operation Mockingbird is alive and well. It's still happening right now. It's been happening since the Cold War. And if you know what Operation Mockingbird is, that is a propaganda campaign against the American people, specifically targeted for Americans. And what that means is that the CIA controls the media. They control the narrative. I think we all know not only has it been happening, but it continues to happen. And back in the early days of Project Mockingbird, that was when all the Russia hate began, where our government tried to tell us you have to hate Russia. They are the enemy. Russia is the enemy, as part of the Cold War propaganda. And that continues to this day, quite honestly. And it's so effective. The Operation Mockingbird is so effective that even now, people still think that Russia is a communist country. They still think that Putin ruled over communism and socialism, which never happened. It was all done before he stepped into office. They still believe the old stories of what was propagandized to them during the Cold War. And it's been passed on, those legacies, over time, from grandparents to parents to children, that there are still so many people who still believe that Russia is our enemy. And of course, we saw the propaganda machine against Donald Trump, because that's why I call Democrat Party a regime. The Democrat regime controls the CIA, or the other way around, potentially part of the two wings of the same bird, right? The CIA and the Democrat Party. And they control the narrative. And a lot of what we've learned, only as any surprise to you, has been all lies and propaganda. Lies and propaganda. And will we ever see it end? I don't know. I know Tulsi Gabbard would like to see it end. She likes to think that she's working towards an end to Project Mockingbird. The Blaze, of course, is going to do a special on that, as they should. The Blaze puts a lot of good materials out there. They were a big supporter, of course, of Donald Trump. And I'll tell you, I think we do still feel the effects of it, because you turn on the news. Now, even people have gotten upset with me because I talk about Fox National. To me, Fox National is the flip side of the same coin. It's still narrative controlled by the CIA, whether you believe it or don't believe it. Trust me when I say it's true. As a matter of fact, it got so frustrating to me that I don't watch the news at all. And if I were to watch the news, I would watch Newsmax, America Online News, but I prefer to go straight to the sources. These days with the internet, you can reach out, you can see video, you can look at things on the ground and just figure it out for yourself. You do not need the news media to tell you what the news is, unless, of course, you're just really busy. You don't have time to do that research, which I understand, which is, of course, why I do this show. And because to talk about, some of the research I come across and some of the things I'm seeing. And I don't watch the news. So anything I talk about is not what Fox News is talking about. Definitely not CNN or MSNBC. But Fox National, to me, they will talk about some truth, but they only go so far, which is why they got rid of Tucker Carlson, as we know. And I just am at this point where I'm so tired of seeing all the propaganda. Whether Project Mockingbird will ever end, I don't know. But Project Mockingbird, again, is where the CIA controls the media. They control the narrative. They tell the media what they can and cannot say and what they should say because they want to portray a certain type of narrative. And we saw that happen with the Russia hoax, didn't we? And that, of course, is a big topic right now in the White House, a big topic with Donald Trump. Drew says, I went to the grocery store yesterday. Let me tell you, prices are definitely rising. Prices are rising. Matt Nickerson, good morning to you. Matt was my next door neighbor growing up and a big part of my fun summers. I remember when Matt, who is a doctor now, would go off to college, and then everything got really boring when Matt left because he'd sit out in the driveway and his driveway and play his guitar. And I'll never forget those moments. A big, huge part of my summers growing up. Good to see you, Matt. But I'll tell you what, going back to the situation with Hillary Clinton, we talked yesterday about how Kash Patel mentioned that he found these burn bags in the FBI. They say an annex. Now, I don't know if they mean a literal annex, like an area they found documents that are in burn bags, or if they meant they found an annex as in a lot of information. I'm not sure which one is the context they're using, but they found a lot of information. I'm going to read a little bit of this to you because they claim this is the smoking gun against Hillary. Now, keep in mind, nothing's ever going to happen to Hillary Clinton. Nothing's ever going to happen to Obama. We're never going to see that type of justice. The most justice we're going to see is the validation that now we know what we always thought all along is actually true. But if you're waiting for that big day where they come in, they take Hillary away in handcuffs, or they take Obama away in handcuffs, those days are not coming. That's just not going to happen. And so this is the big email here that has come across. And part of one of the emails that were part of Hillary's files, which of course were gladly deleted. This is from Leonard Bernardo, don't know who this guy, or Leonard Bernardo. It says, hi, HRC approved, HRC of course be Hillary Rodham Clinton, approved Julia's idea about Trump and Russian hackers hampering US elections. That should district people from her own missing email, especially if the affair goes to the Olympic level. The point is making the Russian play a US, I know this doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it? This guy doesn't write really well. That should distract people from her own missing email, especially if the affair goes on to the Olympic level. The point is making the Russian play a U.S. domestic issue. It goes on to talk about how they're trying to create this Russiagate against Donald Trump, make the American people believe through something like Project Mockingbird that Donald Trump colluded with Russia, colluded with Putin to sway the election. We all know the story. No point in rehashing it all. We all knew it happened at the time, that Hillary Clinton and her 17 intelligence agencies were lying through their teeth, right? We all knew at the time that it was not true. And I think all of us cast a vote for Donald Trump because we actually believed in him and his policies. For me, not as much about the man as it is the policies. And I don't think we needed any help from Russia because I think going through those 2 terms of Obama told us everything we needed to know about the Democrat regime. But it's like, where do we go from here? Donald Trump told the Senate, you are not going to recess. Not going to happen. We have all these things on the agenda. We are working hard for the American people. We have to fight the left. We are absolutely not going to recess. Whether they'll listen to him, I don't know. I'm assuming that, yes, they will listen to him. But what's going to come out of all this? It's like, I keep thinking, and I know I shouldn't say this, but I keep thinking, is it a distraction for something? Or from something? Because I know Donald Trump knows. I know Congress knows. I know everyone knows. Hillary Clinton is not going to face charges. Obama not going to face charges. Comey, Brennan, all these names being tossed around. None of these people are ever going to see a day in jail. They'll never be arrested. They might be indicted. They might carry it through that far, but nothing more is going to happen. And I would even be surprised if there was any type of indictment, quite honestly. It's good for us that it's validation, but I almost feel like it's a distraction. And I hate to think that the Trump administration is trying to distract us. I mean, what are they trying to distract us from? I don't know. It's one of those things that sooner or later something will be like, oh, well, this is what it was. Because and I understand a lot of this could be just that Donald Trump's very upset, as are we, because obviously they attempted to destroy his life. Not only did they try to put him in prison I mean, this is real life. I mean, we watched it from afar. This man lived it. They tried to bankrupt him. They tried to put him in prison. They probably fully expected he would be in prison right now. And when that didn't work, they tried to assassinate him a number of times, more times than we even know about. And so I don't blame him for being upset and trying to do something, trying to put these people behind bars, and more than anything, to validate himself, to say, you know what, I was persecuted, but I was never guilty of any of these things. And here is the proof. And I feel like it's more about that than anything else, that Donald Trump wants us to believe and to understand that he was never behind any of this Russia hoax. He never did any of the things that they'd said he did. And there were, now, if you're listening to this show, you're right on the same path that I'm on. But there's a lot of conservatives out there. There are some people who were Donald Trump supporters who turned against him and they believed some of the lies. And I think it's great that he's able to turn this around now and prove to those people, at least the people he can get through to, that this was all lies. Now, the problem is the people he really needs to get to, they're not listening. They're watching MSNBC, they're watching CNN. They don't understand, they don't care. None of it matters to them. None of it matters. But I would really like us to validate this all, and then let's move on to more important issues, things we can actually do something about. How about that? We're not going to be able to arrest any of these people. None of these people are going to jail. We'll tarnish their reputations at most, to us. I mean, but we already know. So who's it really hurting? I would really like us to move forward into things that are more important. And Robert Kennedy Jr. doing a great job of that. At the end of the show, I'm about to talk about some health issues and how eating junk food, can increase your risk of lung cancer by 41%. And this study was conducted in Colorado, a wonderful school there in Boulder. So I absolutely believe their research. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some other items that parasites don't like, because I think if you're on the same line as me, you know that parasites are a really big problem in the American health system. And we've never really attributed so many of these different health conditions to parasites, and that we're learning more all the time. We're going to talk about that later, but I would like to focus more on the health of America. I'd like to focus more on not being the police of the world. I would like to focus back on making America great again. I feel like we've lost that focus to some degree. We're still making America great again. We're still working on it. We see these multi-agency task force going after predators, child predators, which we absolutely need, stopping trafficking, removing criminals, illegal criminals out of our country, now tackling the criminals who are born and are natural citizens in our country. So we are doing some really good America First things. However, I know that Donald Trump wants the best for this country. And I know he's making leaps and bounds. And I know it takes time for some of these things to come into effect. I don't even know if you guys saw this. We haven't even talked about this yet, that there is legislation now. We always talk about how do we make our streets safer? How do we make our streets better? Because we know that there are a lot of homeless people out on our streets. There are a lot of people on our streets that have mental illness, mental health situations. And it's always been the story that, well, we can't really do anything about that because you cannot force someone to seek mental health help. You cannot force somebody to be institutionalized, and they have to want to do it because they have their own free will, and we can't go against their rights. That's changed. And I don't really see a lot of people talking about it, but there is a bill now, and Donald Trump is working on this executive order in which, yes, you can and will be able to force someone into being institutionalized while they're checked out. Right now, if somebody's a danger to themselves, I think is the rule, you get that 72 hours where they can be held. That's going to change. We're going to be able to finally help some of these people who are out on our streets who are mentally ill, that right now there's not a darn thing you can do about it. If you have a family member who is suffering from mental illness and you think, I can't do anything about it, they won't take their medicine, they're out on the streets, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? That's going to change. you will be able to help your family member in the very near future. As soon as all of this passes, its regulations, you will be able to contact a health official, a team of people that Donald Trump is going to put into place. You're going to be able to go through the proper channels, and you're going to be able to take your loved one off the streets, or maybe from your home or wherever they might be. You're going to be able to place them into a mental health situation in which they can actually get treatment. And it will no longer be up to that person. You, as their guardian, or you, as their loved one, will be able to make that decision for them. Now, for the random person out on the street, maybe who doesn't have that family member, the government is going to be able to step up, and they're going to be able to take someone who's out living on the street, mentally ill, who's not able to think correctly for themselves, not able to take care of themselves, and they're going to be able to institutionalize them. And I know that sounds like a terrible word, institutionalize. I just can't think of a better word to use for it. But they will be able to admit, how about that? Admit this person into a mental health care program where they can see a doctor, they can get help, and remove them out of harm's way. Now, to me, that's making some serious progress. And I know you're going to say, well, maybe that's not such a good idea. We shouldn't be able to just take somebody off the streets, or, and put them into a hospital or a facility if they don't want to go. Well, I'm sorry to say this, but as we know, there are people out there who cannot make these rational decisions for themselves. And for our own safety and for their safety, they need to be taken off the streets. Because I'll tell you what, people who are living homelessly in our country, who are having these mental health situations, or let's say drug addiction, even, let's go that step further. These people, yes, they can be a harm to us, but more than anything, they become victims. So we're helping them more than we are harming them. And I absolutely think it's a fantastic plan moving forward. Dottie says, Simon Parks told Nino that there will be a few arrests to let people believe there will be justice. Then it will be back to politics as usual. Possibly, Dottie, but I don't know who those arrests will be. If there are arrests, it will be that low-hanging fruit that nobody is like, oh, wow, look at this. We're going after people. Maybe an Anthony Weiner. How about that? Or, something along those lines. But it's not going to be the Bidens. It's not going to be the Clintons. It's not going to be Comey. It's not going to be Fauci. It's not going to be Brennan. Obviously, it's definitely not going to be Obama. So we're not going to see these people being arrested. Now, if there was a fall guy, I could maybe see it being Comey, because I know Donald Trump has a special distaste for Comey, of course. But I don't know. Maybe Comey's daughter, because she may be the one responsible for a lot of these files, Epstein files, being deleted. Dottie, who decides who is mentally ill for your own protection? That's a good question, Dottie. And I think that will actually be easier than what we think that it will be. Because we know there are people, I used to volunteer for a homeless shelter in the city of St. Louis. And it's pretty obvious when you go into these shelters that there are people who definitely are not making good, rational decisions for themselves. It's winter and they're not wearing a coat. They're not wearing gloves. Sometimes they're not even wearing shoes. I've come across people in the city of St. Louis who are sleeping on a sidewalk with nothing, not even a blanket. And because their mental health condition prevents them from understanding that they need to stay warm to survive. And I'm thinking it's going to be those types of cases above some of the others. And Dottie says, like, we can trust the medical industry. I know, it's so tough, isn't it, Dottie? I don't trust everyone in the medical industry. I don't. I don't always know who has the best interest for us. But when it comes to this type of situation, I feel that any type of medical care, any type of help is going to be better than where these people are at. Because I'll tell you what, there are women and men being sexually assaulted in the alley, in the streets, in these shelters, and they don't deserve that. And they're mentally ill. They cannot protect themselves. And we have to start fighting for the vulnerable people. And I've always believed that the only reason why in this country we've never tackled homelessness, or the mentally ill situation, is because there's no money to be made from it. It's only money you spend. Now, if the government could, or an individual could come up with a way to make money on rescuing homeless people, or make money on helping the mentally ill, they would certainly do it. But there's been no way to do that. Now, I can see if we forcibly remove people from the streets who are, there's no plan yet for the homeless folks. This is just for the people who are mentally ill, whether they're in the streets, in their homes, wherever they might be. However, I could see maybe there's some incentive there because obviously, if we're forcing these people to take medication while they're at a facility, that's going to give some money to the pharmaceutical companies. It's going to give some money to these facilities. The government is going to pay for it. You're going to pay for it. I have to say, though, that I'm willing. I don't want my tax money to go to Ukraine. I don't. We're getting ready to give $1 billion to Taiwan. I don't want any of my tax money to go to Taiwan. But I would be more than happy to give some tax money to help these people who are mentally ill, who so desperately need help because they are the real victims. And Genevieve, here late. Good morning, Genevieve. Good to see you. So I think that's a positive step. We'll talk a little bit more about that down the road because I've got so much to talk about today. I'll probably never get it all in. But there are leaps and bounds that we're making in the Trump administration. There are some things that I've only dreamed of that could happen that are actually happening. But I want to go back and focus on America first. I was watching a video this morning about a city in California I've never even heard of. I think it was called Wyneka, Yneka, I believe, Wyneka. That's how they pronounced it, California. And they showed this area where the homeless live. And they had that that orange barricade material around this area. Within that area, there were hundreds of homeless people living in tents. There was trash everywhere, piled high, trash all over the place. And no one is doing a single thing about any of this. They're basically, herding these homeless people into this area. They're not, the city is not picking up the trash, obviously. They're not doing anything at all to help these people, and I feel like we've got to do something. Until we help the most vulnerable people in our country, we'll never be a stronger society. We have to help the most vulnerable people first. And that includes children. I've been watching a lot of DCFS videos recently, and some of the things I'm seeing are very disturbing. It's hard to believe that there are children right now, right here in the United States, who are starving, who live at home with their parents, but their parents don't buy them food. They might buy themselves food, but they don't buy food for the kids. They don't give the kids food. There's kids running around covered in feces, kids being left at home. And DCFS, they just cannot keep up with it. They can't keep up with it. And a lot of times what happens is because they can't keep up, because they are stuck in this, quagmire of the parents have rights, you can't do anything about it, these kids end up dead. And the ones that don't end up dead may as well be, because some of them grow up and they end up continuing that cycle with their own children. It's crazy to think that we have children in our country who are living like this. It's mind-boggling to me. It's like I don't know. I was very lucky. I had good parents. We had food, we had shelter, we had all of these great things, and never had to spend a night worrying about, where we're going to eat, the next meal or so on. And to think that there are kids out there who have no food, they've got to, if they don't go to school, they don't eat. It's a crazy situation. Dottie says, my neighbor just had her second hip replacement. First one 4 months ago. This time she was given a hard time refusing blood. I was questioned just before being wheeled into surgery. Anesthesiologist wanted to know if it was for religious reasons. You mean for not accepting blood? One thing is, I know it's hard if you have an emergency, but you can go and donate your own blood, for surgery. I know when my brother, he was burned in a fire, as some of you know, and us family members, he had to get a lot of blood transfusions. We could go and we could ask his friends to go and donate blood for him. And I know an emergency situation's a little bit different. If you're going in and you don't know that you're going to need blood, you might have to take donor blood. And I definitely understand the worry that people have that you're going to get this donor blood. I think that the blood banks are pretty good about separating the blood. I know when my brother was going through all this, we talked to the people who ran the blood bank there at the hospital, and they were very particular. Before you could give blood, you had to be tested. Now, of course, that was before people were getting the vaccinations for COVID and so on. And I've given blood before. I've given plasma. Whenever the COVID was going on, they said, hey, we need the plasma of people who've not been vaccinated. I went up and I gave plasma. And I think they're doing a pretty good job separating it. Now, I know it's hard to trust the medical community. God knows I know that. But at the same time, I think we have no choice. Until we have a better system in place, we just have no choice. You have to protect your life first. And good morning, Robert. And so, therefore, we just have to do what we have to do to survive, number one. And that might mean taking blood from a source that maybe you're not so sure about. So, that's my answer for that. But I'm glad you brought that up, Dottie, because I was going to talk about the elderly next. I told you guys a story not too long ago where I was getting my tire repaired. A guy came in, much older guy. I think he was kidding, but yet not kidding. And he said, "Oh, I got to pay all this money for a tire. There goes my food allowance, for this week." And he told a lady was standing behind him. I was standing a couple people back, and she's like, "Oh, well, I've got, some potatoes or something at home." I don't know what she was telling me. He's like, "No, no, no. I'm fine. I'll make do." And but that's what our elderly people are facing. They're facing that choice between medication and paying rent. And if you look around, really look around. I know we're so darn busy. We get up, we go to work, we come home, we're in our own little bubble. And one of the things that I'm so glad I was so privileged to be able to go to Georgia and go door to door canvassing, of course, for Donald Trump under being paid, of course, by Elon Musk. And I got to see so many things I would never see otherwise. You really get a glimpse into other people's lives. And that's why I know that there are so many Americans who are struggling. So many Americans struggling. I talked to so many elderly people who cried when I told them why I was there. They're like, "Oh my God, I'm not going to survive another 4 years under Democrat rule. Thank God for Donald Trump, because he's going to change everything for me." And I do think he will. It takes time for grocery prices, Drew, to your comment, to go down. I think Donald Trump is going to fix things. Dottie says you cannot request unvaxxed blood, but they do ask when you donate. Yeah, I was wondering about that, Dottie. Good morning, Stacy. So there's so many things we need to tackle in this country, but we ourselves, we don't have to wait for the government to step in. We don't have to wait. I know it's kind of dangerous to go out and face people who are homeless or people who are have mental health conditions, but you can donate to organizations that do. You yourself don't have to go out. Now, be very careful, what organizations you donate to, because I'll tell you, there's one that I just ran across recently in St. Louis. And I'm not going to say the name of it. It's over in O'Fallon, Missouri. I think it's in O'Fallon, Missouri. And they take donations, but the people who work there, who go to the church, they go through all the donations first and they keep what they want. And whatever they don't want is what they donate. And I don't like that. That is not okay. Find a good organization that you can donate to where those goods go directly out to the person that receives the benefits, that needs the benefits. That's one way you can help. But I'll tell you what you can do. And we've talked about this before on the show because it's a big topic for me, especially heading into the fall season where we have our holidays. Now's the time. You can start doing your research. Find out who in your community could use some extra help, or maybe go into those communities where there's not anyone who can help and, make somebody's day, give them some food items, bake some muffins. There's so many different ways you can help that I can't even begin to start down that list, but you all know what you can do. Look for those people in your community and in other maybe less fortunate communities and try to help those people. We don't have to wait for the government to do it. We can do it ourselves. Robert says freedom gardens like World War II, right? Exactly that. I mean, there's so many different ways we can improve the world around us without waiting for the government. I know everybody would say, "Oh, we got to wait for Donald Trump and see what Donald Trump does." Not really. I mean, for some things you can do yourself. So get out and do it. That's what I've got to say. Get out and do it. Lots of other stuff to talk about today. We'll jump into more of that. Some of the things I wanted to go over, I got to make sure I stay on topic because you know me, I will be all over the place. Today I'm I took a screenshot of my topics because I got to make sure I talk about these things because we're going to talk about some aliens today too. So going back to Donald Trump, though, we've talked a lot about Jerome Powell and the interest rates. Another thing hurting Americans, high interest rates. These things all take time. Now, Donald Trump, he is determined to get Powell out of there. Absolutely determined. I think that he will be successful. Now, we're hearing that Powell will be out for sure around May. That's what we're being told. That's the story. However, that's not good enough for Donald Trump. He's like, no, I want Powell out now. So he's calling on the Federal Reserve to take over so that we can finally lower interest rates and finally, give some relief to some Americans. Of course, let's hope that happens because Powell has to go. He has to go. And I never did follow up to see if they had that open door policy for this last meeting on last Wednesday. I never did look at that. I'm assuming he did because I haven't heard anything crazy come out of it. So we'll see. We'll see where that goes. I already talked a little bit about the Senate committee. They're greenlighting this $1 billion to go to Taiwan. I don't want $1 of mine going to Taiwan. Quite honestly, it's not because I don't care about the Thai people. I do, but not enough to pay for them. Whatever happens over there, that doesn't affect us. Why do we have to continue to be the world's police? Why? I understand why we want Thailand, why we don't want Thailand under China control. I absolutely understand that. But do we want to give them $1 billion to help themselves? I mean, why don't we give $1 billion to Americans here who really need it? $1 billion amongst Americans would go pretty far now, wouldn't it? Towards policies or towards actual money. Remember when they were supposed to give us parts of the Doge cut? Remember that? It was suggested. Now, Donald Trump never said, yes, we're going to do this. It was suggested by some random guy on X. And then it kind of snowballed from there where people were talking about it. And of course, it never happened, did it? Now they're talking about a stimulus payment that could come back to you from some other, from tariffs, that they're going to take some of that $150 billion we got from tariffs and divide that up against to some Americans. I think up to $2,400 per family. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I don't think you're going to see any money from the government anytime soon. And that's okay because, as long as that money is going back into the United States, but it's not. We're sending $1 billion to Taiwan. We're sending all of this money still to Ukraine. We continue to help Ukraine. I don't understand it. Now Donald Trump has given this deadline to Putin. It started out as 50 days. Then Donald Trump's like, nope. You're not allowed 50 days. We're going to reduce that to 10. And now Putin, of course, is speaking out against it. And he's like, I don't care. I don't care what you guys want or think. He does not care about Donald Trump's deadline. He is not going to do anything different. And of course, Zelensky is saying, we're not even going to talk about peace until Putin's been replaced. Putin is not going to be replaced. That's not going to happen. Robert, Elon floated the Doge cuts going to taxpayers. Well, it wasn't Elon. Robert, it was actually just some random guy because I was following along pretty closely. It was just some random guy who worked for some financial institution who came up with a plan, which was not even a good plan, quite honestly. He came up with a plan, of course, we're cutting all this money from the government. Let's turn that around and give it to the American people. But the problem is that random guy, I don't even know his name now, but whoever that random guy was, he was only going to give money to certain Americans. Only to the highest taxpayers, not to everybody. And so, because I even made a comment on it at the time, I'm like, this is not a good plan. Because even if, you give this money to a lot of the higher people who paid in the most amounts of taxes, what about everybody else? Even people who don't pay taxes at all still were hurt by USAID and some of these other organizations that were stealing money from Americans because they stole money from a lot of these programs that helped elderly people or homeless people or mentally ill people. So to me, if they were going to give refunds, they should have given a refund to every single American. But that was definitely not Elon Musk's idea. But when he heard it, I think he did want it to be true. And he did, I keep wanting to say tweet. He did post about it quite a bit, but never once did Donald Trump say, yes, we're going to give money to Americans, nor did Elon. He had wishful thinking for him and all of us. But it was a big topic at the time, of course. And of course, that guy got his 15 minutes of fame, no longer in the news. And I can't remember the guy's name. But it was a wishful thinking situation. So we'll see where that goes. But I'm tired of giving money to people. I'm tired of fighting these wars for these other countries. I don't want to be any part of that. And this situation between Ukraine and Russia, I don't know if it's ever going to end. And I'll tell you, Putin doesn't care. We can play all the games we want. We can threaten Putin all we want. That man does not care. Why? because we have nothing to hold over him. We've taken everything away. We have sanctioned them and sanctioned them and sanctioned them. They do not care. They've grown stronger because of the sanctions. India is saying the same thing. Us, of course, putting in this 25% sanction or tariff against India, and then some other sanctions along with it. India said the same thing. We don't care. You know what? India will buddy up even closer to Russia and China. That's the direction India will go. And India, it will be, and they will grow from these sanctions against them and from these tariffs against them. All we're doing is strengthening other countries. And I'm not saying that Donald Trump doesn't have the right intentions or he's not doing the right thing, but and he knows it's not going to have the same effect. He even made a statement yesterday that was like, well, yes, we're going to continue to go after Russia, blah, 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 but, they don't care, and they don't care. And this 10-day limit to ending the war doesn't matter. The bigger question is what are we going to do about it when that day number 10 hits? Then what are we going to do about it? And I think that somebody said it was either today. What day was it? Do you guys know? But when that day hits, Putin doesn't care. While we're all playing these games, he is continuing to move further and further and further into Ukraine and taking more valuable land. And that land is very valuable because that's where all of the minerals are. He continues, and he's going on the right path to take all the minerals. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know where we're going to go from here, but I know one thing, that Zelensky is not going to be able to put in any kind of order to remove Putin from office. That's not going to happen. We're going to back Putin into a corner, and we're going to end up regretting it. That's what's going to happen. And we Americans, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, but we do have this elitism about us. We all do, including myself, where we think we have the best military. We have the best troops. We have the best military equipment. We have the best fighter jets. We have the best defense systems. We have everything is the best. But you know what? And then we say, well, all these other countries, their military is inferior to us. Their equipment is inferior. Well, I'll tell you what, we don't have a geranium drone like Russia does. We don't. We don't have the technology in some aspects that China does. We might have some really great fighter jets. We do have some great military members. Our military, we're not going to go and do these kamikaze strikes on other countries. Our people want to live, right? So that gives us a weaker advantage against some of these countries who will die in battle. They're going there to die for their country. That's not what we have here. We don't, thankfully, that's not what we're doing. And I think we need to start backing up a little bit and reminding ourselves that, some of these other countries while we're under Democrat rule, putting all of our money into Ukraine, we, on the other hand, we're losing out. We're not as strong as we once were. And so then we threaten these other countries. Well, what are we going to do when they don't heed our warnings? When they strike back, we're going to be in a really bad spot. And Robert, India needs our markets. Do they though, Robert? People said that about Russia at one time too. But what we have to remember, India, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but India will absolutely move closer to China and to Russia. They will not need the United States any longer. They will find ways around it. And I can guarantee you that Russia and China will make sure that they no longer need the United States. They will shelter them and bring them under their wing, and they will make sure that they don't need us, because that hurts us. And if we keep placing these sanctions and these tariffs against these different countries, we're going to get to a position where we're just going to keep pushing them further. Just like you, and let's say if you have this group of friends and you don't like something that's going on, and you start threatening your friends and blah, 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 and you think, oh, well, these friends need me, and they're not going anywhere. They're, eventually they'll cave in, but they don't. They go and they find new friends. And then guess what? You're left on this island by yourself with no friends. And we're heading in that direction. And it's kind of nerve-wracking to me to see it all play out. And I know that Donald Trump he's playing chess, some people say, when everybody else is playing checkers. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of good chess players out there. So we'll see how all of that turns around. And we'll probably find out pretty quick, because Putin right now is not very happy with the United States at all. but it's a good thing and a bad thing. So I wanted to throw that in there because obviously we're not making a lot of progress. But something I was reading that I was a little bit surprised about was the situation going on with Israel. Now, we talked a little bit yesterday about Israel and how Malta, Canada, some of these countries are coming forward. And they're coming forward and they're saying, all right, Israel, we're going to go against you because you are committing genocide against the people in Gaza. So we are going to recognize Palestine as an independent state. Well, there's some other people who have joined into that battle. Sweden is one of those. Let's see, Robert, what did you say? India and China have continuous border skirmishes similar to India and Pakistan. We just never hear about them. Oh, I'm sure that they do. But that does, oh, Donna, good morning, Donna. You overslept. I wish I could have overslept. I was awake at 3 o'clock this morning. And probably true, Robert. A lot of those different, obviously true. A lot of those different countries do. Quite honestly, Russia and China don't really get along that well, but yet they're still members of BRICS. So I think in the bigger picture, they will all make sure that they all stick together, despite, because I know China does not like a lot of what Russia does. China likes to stay out of a lot of these different things. And Russia, is like a bull and goes full forward. China has said many times to Putin that you need to stop this right now. You need to have peace, against Ukraine. You need to, and they've said many times they did never condoned Russia going into Ukraine, but yet Putin doesn't care. But they're still buddies with China. They're still going to protect each other because they're in the end, they're still going to be part of the same. They're still going to be part of BRICS, and BRICS is always going to be the antithesis of NATO. I thought we were too, but all of a sudden now we're buddies with NATO. So we'll see how that works out. But anyway, so I was talking about Israel, and we've been talking about Israel the past couple of days and how these various countries are coming out. The UK, again, Malta, Canada. Now we have Sweden. There was Slovenia. These countries are all falling in line, and they're all saying because of these UN videos and some information coming out. I'm going to show you in a minute a clip of an interview Tucker Carlson did. But I'll tell you what. Before we go that far, I want to explain something very quickly. It's a very difficult situation when you're the host of a show or just as a general person to talk about Israel. Because if you say the wrong thing, all of a sudden you're anti-Semitic. Nobody wants to be considered an anti-Semite, so I want to make it very clear going into this, what we're going to be talking about. I absolutely do believe that Israel should be protected, that they should, of course, have the right to exist. I am absolutely in favor of the Israeli people, no question about it. But like any government, the government of Israel is not perfect. We, the United States government, certainly not perfect under Democrat rule, but not even perfect under Donald Trump. There's all things that we've seen happen, that maybe we wish were a little bit different even under Donald Trump. No government is going to be perfect, and that includes Israel. Netanyahu, not my favorite person, has nothing to do with how I feel about the country of Israel or Jews or the Israeli people, but I don't always like his decisions. And while I absolutely do feel that he should go after Hamas, he should eradicate Hamas, at the same time, we have to recognize why Hamas became Hamas, why they, started these attacks against, of course, Israelis. Don't condone it. It's an absolutely horrific situation that happened on October 7th. We all know that the Israeli settlers and coming into, of course, some of those West Bank areas have been attacked by the people of Gaza, by Hamas, etc. It's been a bad situation for a really long time. We all know that. But now going forward, something that's happening right now that is absolutely newsworthy is that there are people who are saying that MAGA is turning against Israel. I feel that MAGA, Donald Trump supporters, not necessarily turning against Israel, the people, or Jews, or the religion, the Jewish religion, but against what the government of Israel is doing to the people in the West Bank and Gaza. And that is because we see with our own eyes children starving, like we talked about yesterday. We see people going to get aid and getting shot at. And I played a video of it yesterday. These are things that as humans, we look at and we think, gosh, I know Hamas is really bad. I know you go into the Gaza West Bank and you don't know who's Hamas, who isn't. Anytime the IDF goes into that area, yes, they're under attack as well. Yes, they're fearing for their lives also. And there's no easy answer or no easy solution, but it was brought into the conversation yesterday on various news, sources, these back channels I'm on, that MAGA is turning against Israel. And it was kind of interesting because Tucker Carlson has done a few other interviews. And we're seeing, I think, the world kind of take notice that, hey, Israel, yes, we support you. We support your right to exist. However, what you're doing over here is a war crime. People are coming to get aid and you're shooting at them. You're starving people to death. Now, finally, Israel has gotten the warning loud and clear. They are giving aid. They are setting in some food supplies. They hadn't for a long time. They allowed no food supplies into the Gaza area for a very long time. So now they are, but then there's a lot that comes with that too. I'm going to show you just a portion of this video with Tucker Carlson. And, I'm going to tell you, let me see, I've got the guy's name here who he's interviewing, but it's a tough interview to watch. So Tucker Carlson, he's interviewing Lieutenant Colonel Tony Aguilar. Now, Tony Aguilar is going to explain what's happening and why you're seeing some MAGA supporters turning against what Israel is doing, not against Israel themselves, but against what they're doing. And part of his point is that they're, starving civilians, and they're forcing them to walk 8 to 12 kilometers. Think about what 8 to 12 kilometers is and how far that is. That's how far they have to go through a military corridor where they're being shot at to get food. So I'm just going to play a portion of this interview. It's a longer interview, so I'm only going to play 2 minutes of it. But we're going to take a good look at this here.
You didn't see Palestinians with weapons. You didn't feel threatened. I'm sure there's a threat there, but you didn't experience it. But you said that there was shooting. Who was shooting at what and why?
So to walk everyone through kind of how a distribution site works in terms of how are people being shot at? How does this happen? Because mind you, the Palestinians, to get to the south, they cannot drive. They have to walk one way from where they live because they have to go through the established military corridors, just one way to get to where they have to get to. They're walking anywhere from 8 to 12 kilometers one way to get to the site. So when they queue up in the morning and the queuing gets into to the magnitude of thousands, the IDF hold them there with tanks in place. When the UG Solutions personnel call on the radio to the IDF to say the site is ready, the crowd is released in a massive tidal wave of people. It's dehumanizing and rushing towards the site because they're starving. As they're coming to the site, the IDF shoot at them. Machine guns, mortars, tank rounds, artillery, thousands of Palestinians rushing down to the site, and over their heads, you just see tracer bullets flying. Tracers, tank rounds, artillery rounds. And they do that to keep the Palestinians on the right path. So as they're coming to the site and they're getting shot at, it's dark. The Israeli forces in the south are reserve conscripts. They're not the IDF that are in the elite active army unit. They're conscript reservists. They don't train. They don't get a lot of training. Rarely do they get to shoot their weapons, and they don't have night vision capability. So they're shooting into the dark at thousands of people when the sun rises and bodies are strewn along the road. And the IDF say, oh, we didn't do that. Really? How did that happen then? You did do that. You did do that.
So, that's again Tucker Carlson talking about the situation between Israel, of course, and the Palestinians, the people living in the Gaza and West Bank areas. And when you watch it unfold, it's very difficult to watch it. It really is. It's very difficult because as humans, we feel for other humans. We have compassion and empathy for other humans. And while a lot of these people, who have supported Hamas, who are part of Hamas, have contributed to this problem, you might want to say, well, good. I hope they do all starve to death, and I think that's what Netanyahu's plan is to say we need to eradicate these people altogether. They hate us. They want to end us. Let's just get rid of them all, men, women, and children. but that's just something you can't do. It's a war crime. You cannot do that. You have to be able to make sure people have food and medical care and these types of things. And that's not what they've allowed to happen. They've put these people in a fishbowl. They have absolutely forbidden Egypt to open their border to let aid in. And when they did, one time Egypt did let aid in, the IDF attacked them. And so we cannot let that happen. We have to give these people food. We have to give them aid. We, America, if you've noticed, we've stayed out of it. We have stayed out of it. We are not over there dropping aid packages to the people, in this Gaza area. We are not giving them money. We're really not doing anything to help them at all. And should we be? It's not our battle. We're giving $1 billion, of course, to Thailand. We're giving all this money to Ukraine. But we used to go out as Americans, and that was one of our things we did in a wartime situation. We made sure people had at least food. Now, we didn't do it in Yemen, 250,000 people over there, starved to death. We allowed that to happen. We didn't help those people. And we're not helping people now, And the other question that comes up is that, and this is one I think you'll have to decide for yourself. I talked about this the week before last, and I got absolutely blasted, for it, by the way, where I was talking about Israeli settlers in the Gaza area, West Bank area. I look at these hair flyaways and going in and burning down Christian churches, attacking Christians. And people are like, that's crazy. That didn't happen. You don't know what you're talking about. And there's an interview I'm going to play for you that talks about exactly that. Now, one thing that I disagree with, you guys can make up your own mind. I have a lot of Jewish friends, and I have never come across, a Jew that hates Christians. Yes, we agree that we're different religions, but I've never come across any type of hate situation. I have some Jewish friends and I love them to death. They love me to death. And they are very, very much part of their Jewish religion, but I've never ever encountered that myself. Now, of course, I'm not in Israel. I'm not in the West Bank or in Gaza. So maybe that's why I've not personally felt it. But I'm going to play this very quick interview for you here. And then we're going to decide what we think about this.
But the idea behind the Christian Zionists is that to facilitate the second coming, for religious reasons, we should support Israel. But this does, as you say, cut against the fact that the Israelis oftentimes treat Christians as badly as they do Muslims. There was recently a case where they bombed a Catholic church in northern Gaza, and Trump was infuriated when he heard this, and he called up Netanyahu and told him, this is recently, like within the past 2 weeks, told Netanyahu that he had to apologize. And the Pope even spoke out on this. But even there, the criticism is quite muted because, again, hardly anybody in the West really criticizes Israel in a meaningful way.
It is just a little bit odd that you could, on Christian grounds, support the bombing of a Christian church. I mean, there are lots of theological differences between sex and Christianity, but if you're getting to the point like where Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, is, where you think Jesus is commanding you to support the murder of Christians, you don't need to be like a theologian to think maybe I've gone off course. No.
Yeah. You're not going to get any argument from me on that.
Yeah. So where does it go from here now that things that, everyone was afraid to talk about any of this to the extent that people understood it because they don't want to be called names, and because those names it's horrible to be called that. And sometimes it's true, but for most people, it's not true at all. They're not hateful. That's not why they have these views. So once those slurs lose their power, as I think they quickly are, in the same way the word racist lost its power from overuse, like, where are we? What happens next?
Tucker Carlson, and I hadn't seen the last part of that interview till just now. Tucker Carlson brings up a really good point. As I said at the beginning of my, conversation about this, is these are very sensitive topics to talk about. I do my best, quite honestly, to not talk a lot about Israel in my show, because I know there's always somebody waiting in the wings. And we definitely, this show, we have a lot of Jewish listeners, a lot of people, obviously, who support Israel. I have a lot of personal friends, again, who are Jews, who I love to death. And I certainly understand. We've had these personal conversations privately about what's happening between Israel and Gaza and what's going on in that situation and how we as Americans support them. And I think my friends know my position, of course, not necessarily everybody does, but it's a very difficult conversation to have. And I'm sure some of you have probably found yourself in that place as well, because the last thing you want is someone to think, I don't support the Israeli people. I don't support the Jews. I want harm to come, to the Jewish people. And that's not true at all, of course, for the majority of Americans. Now, there are some that do, but for the majority of Americans, I don't think that's true. But I think that the fear of being labeled anti-Semitic or talking about something and people coming out and saying, oh, well, you must hate Jews, because you're talking about this. But no government is perfect. There's no government that I know in this entire world who makes every right decision. And I hope that Netanyahu takes to heart that you cannot attack Christians. If you attack Christians, if you attack Christian churches, you are going to lose the support of the Christian community, whether that's in America or anywhere else around the world. You have to draw the line somewhere. As Christians, we don't attack the Israelis. We don't attack Jews. Most of us, I know you have these isolated instances in which that happens, but I think the vast majority of us, love our Jewish friends and neighbors and people, in our communities, and we want the Israelis to have that justice from what happened to them on October 7th. But at some point, we've got to say what's happening in this situation has to stop. We have to stop committing this genocide against the people in Gaza. They have paid a stiff price. And if we haven't already gotten rid of Hamas, which we haven't, it's not the way to do it. We have to find another way to eradicate Hamas without killing everyone. I don't know what the answer is, and oftentimes I don't, because I'm not the person with the pen or the auto pen or the signature, to make these decisions. Stacy says, St. Charles Jewish Festival, August 10th. Yeah, I used to, back in the day, I don't live in that area anymore. I belong to the JCCA over there in Creve Coeur. I would go, and they have a really beautiful gym and a spa there that I would often go to. And so, I have a lot of friends that belong there as well who kind of brought me in. So we have to discern the difference between the religious aspect of being a Jew versus a Christian. We have to think more about the fact that the humanitarian part of it. And I'll tell you what, we're not the only ones. There were recently protests inside of Israel. Quite honestly, a lot of Jews inside Israel that rose up and said, hey, what we're doing is wrong. We can't starve people. We can't shoot and kill innocent people. We cannot burn down Christian churches. So it's not the sentiment of the entire country, of course. It is probably not any part of the country, but it is the sentiment of the government. And it's the government that we have to think about and separate that from religion and from the people. And we'll talk more about this as the situation continues to unfold. You guys aren't making a lot of comments because you probably feel like I do, or you're scared to say too much. And which I don't know why, because most of us are not anti-Semitic, but yet you're so scared of, like Tucker Carlson said, of being labeled that for just bringing up the topic. But sometimes we just have to talk about things that are uncomfortable to talk about, just like racism. The more we talk and explore these different community-based things, the better off we will be. We'll talk, you talk through it, you see how these people feel. We know how this person feels or I feel. And then that's how you come to peace and something to talk about. We don't have a whole lot more time left, but I still got a lot to talk about. So we're going to get through this. I want to talk a little bit first about jobs. What type of jobs are going to survive into the future? I have a little bit easier of a morning this morning, so I got a few minutes to stay a little bit later than what I normally do. Then I'm going to talk about some health things. But first, I want to talk about the jobs. Now, these are the jobs that are losing the most employees in their sectors, the jobs that are being hit the hardest. And some of these might surprise you. Some of them may not. Postal service clerks, bank tellers and related clerks, data entry clerks, cashiers and ticket clerks, administrative assistants, executive secretaries, printing and related trade workers, accounting, of course, bookkeeping, payroll clerks, material recording and stock keeping clerks, transportation attendants and conductors, door-to-door salespeople, graphic designers, claims adjusters, examiners, investigators, legal officials, legal secretaries, telemarketers. Now, this all makes sense to me. These are the sectors that are losing employees the fastest, jobs going to AI, jobs being lost to technology. And if you look at this list, it makes a lot of sense because why? You don't need to necessarily go to the post office anymore to mail your packages. You can print out a label at home. You can have FedEx, UPS come and pick it up, or you can drop it off at a drop-off center. A lot of these jobs have been replaced by technology or by AI. My mom and I were out yesterday. We went out to a farmer's market that was pretty far out. And when we were out at this farmer's market, we drive through all these old country roads. And of course, it's like gravel roads. And I looked around, I said, one of these days, not in our lifetimes, but all of these roads are going to be different. All of these fields are going to be gone. There's going to be, shopping centers and high rises and apartments. I mean, just think, 100 years from now, what this rural area is going to look like. And then I backtracked. I said, wait a minute, not shopping centers. I said, by then there will be no shopping centers. We're getting to the point now where we don't need to leave our house to shop at all, do we? We don't need to leave at all. And you think about it, anything you want can be delivered to you. You like to go to the store. I like to go to the store. I like to pick out my own stuff, right? But you don't have to. You do it because you want to do it. And at some point, as we're all working paycheck to paycheck and prices increase, and we have to work harder, we have to work more hours and more days, we're going to have less time to shop. We're going to rely more on these deliveries. Going shopping is going to become much more difficult because if you live in California, they've got everything locked up. You go to buy a box of Cheez-Its, you got to have somebody open up the Cheez-Its box for you because it's all locked up, and think about it from the other side of things, the retail side. If stores were to shut down where you're no longer allowed to enter the store and shop, guess what? They're going to get rid of all that theft. Now, you still may have employee theft, but you're not going to have retail theft. If you lock your doors and you make everything a delivery service or a pickup service, guess what's going to happen? You're going to save your company a ton of money. And we could get to the point as theft continues to increase where insurance companies start saying, hey, Walgreens, you're letting people come in, or CVS or whoever you are, you're letting people come in and just box up whatever they want, walk right out the door. You don't do anything. You don't stop it. But then you file an insurance claim for all the items that were stolen. And that insurance claim makes the insurance prices go up. Just our average, us average people, our insurance prices go up because we have to pay for all the theft that's taking place. So at some point, these insurance companies are going to say enough because us, the people, we're going to get tired of paying all that extra money out because we're not the people going in and stealing things, but yet we have to pay the price for the people who do commit these thefts. And we're going to demand from the insurance companies that, hey, we're not going to pay anymore. We're not going to continue to pay these prices. Or maybe the government steps in and they say, you know what, we're going to put a cap. You cannot continue raising prices just because you have theft in the retail sector. Well, then what's going to happen? The insurance companies are going to tell these retail people, we're no longer going to pay your claims. If you're allowing people to come in and steal, we're not paying you anymore. That's the end of that. And then guess what's going to happen? Retailers are going to wise up. They're going to lock the doors. They're going to say, hey, people, we can no longer allow you to come into the store because too many of you steal from us. So therefore, if you want some items, you're going to have to order them online. And you're going to have to come and pick them up, or you're going to have to allow us to deliver them to you. And I really do think that any form of shopping, maybe not in our lifetime, but maybe it's happening fast, it's going to come to an end. We're no longer going to have that luxury of being able to go to a store unless now Amazon, Google, as much as I hate to say it, they have the right idea. You have these Amazon stores where you cannot come into the Amazon store unless you have this Amazon card or Amazon membership information. You come in, you scan your Amazon card or bracelet, or someday it'll probably be a wrist chip. You go in, you get what you want, and when you leave, then it automatically charges your account. Now, yes, it's not a foolproof system because somebody could steal your Amazon information and go shopping. But that can happen. It doesn't mean people aren't going to break into the cases and run out the door and still steal things. I mean, there are still things that can happen, but I do think it's revolutionizing how we shop. And Donna says AI, absolutely. Donna also said it's a smoky day today. Yeah, very bad air quality day for people in the Midwest. Donna, clothes shopping online doesn't work for me. Donna, I personally, I guess I kind of have ordered so much online that even the stores know, my general size. They'll be like, nope, that's not a good fit for you. It's kind of funny how that works. If I go to order something on Amazon, they'll say, nope, this is the best size for you. It knows what I look like, which is kind of funny. But it is difficult to order clothes online. It is. And I think for it to move and progress to that officially, formally, they're going to have to come up with better ways of returning things. And I think they're trying to do that because a lot of people do buy clothing items. And you know what? A lot of online retailers tell you now, I don't know if you've noticed this, if you're somebody who orders a lot online, it'll say, this is an item that is returned often. And then you backtrack and you think, okay, well, if people are returning this, I'm not going to buy it because I would probably want to return it also. And then you can also go through the reviews. And what's great is people buy clothing online. They take photos of themselves and they say, oh, this is my weight. This is what size I ordered. And you can see a picture of what they look like. That gives you a better idea. But I don't know, Donna. I don't think we have a choice. I think it's going to happen somewhere down the road that we are no longer going to have the luxury of being able to go into the store and shop. Now, according to Billy Gates, and the reason why I trust Billy Gates' predictions is because he's probably paying for these things to come true. He predicts there will only be 3 careers that thrive post AI. And he said that will only be, let's see here, my thing. It'll be coders, energy specialists, and biologists. He thinks those are the only 3 careers that will survive once AI is fully underway. Now, do you believe him? Do you not believe him? I believe him because Billy Gates will make sure that these things happen. So if you have children and you want them to survive past the AI society, coders, energy specialists, biologists, that's the way to go. Because we talked about this yesterday, even some of our doctors being replaced by AI. Now, Matt Nickerson probably isn't listening to the show anymore. Not only is he a doctor, but he's a owner of a business that from what I understand, staffs emergency rooms with doctors. And AI is AI is never going to replace doctors. It's never going to replace surgeons. I've talked already about going in and getting a robotic, biopsy, but a doctor had to be there. In fact, there was an entire team of like 15 people in that room, to conduct this biopsy by a robot. But they will continue to improve on these processes. And now we have AI, giving diagnoses, telling what type of medicine, should be given. Now, AI cannot act alone. So I think we're pretty safe to say that, folks in the medical world will continue to thrive. And Donna says, alteration shop is a good thing for me. Right. And maybe alterations and people who do sewing will become more popular because when we buy those things online, it's not so easy to return. So it's better to just alter them. I do that. I alter it myself. It may not look the greatest, but I bought a suit jacket not too long ago that I wear for work. And it was a little bit too big. And so I altered it and, kind of sewed it up to fit me a little bit better. So those are some of the things we have to do. Dottie says, my surgery was done robotic. Yeah, robotic surgeries are very common these days. Pam says, absolutely not. I'm personally in a liquid business. AI will never replace anyone cleaning, sewer pumping, septic tanks, pumping grease traps. You're probably right, Pam. I know a little bit about what you do, and you're probably right in that area. And John says, completely disagree with you on this one and the service industry. The position cannot be done by AI or be outsourced, and it won't fix AC. Not now it won't. Not now it won't. But who would have ever thought we'd be where we are even now back 50 years ago? There's the problem is, and I don't disagree with either of you, Pam or John, because I understand a little bit about your business and what you're saying. But think about this. The powers that be, people like Billy Gates here, and those people are working nonstop to put you out of business. That's their only goal in life is to put all of us out of business. I worry about it in my own field. I work in anti-piracy. And every once in a while, I hear these stories about machines that they can install, at a theater to prevent piracy. And so I feel like, okay, well, I have two options. I can either start, selling these machines, putting myself out of work, but bringing in a new concept, or maybe I will just be phased out. Now, it probably won't happen in my lifetime, but what about my business going forward? If my son wants to take over or something, you have to move with the times. And I can guarantee you, there are, Donna says, AI can't clean houses. I don't know about that, Donna. I've got a robot vacuum running around the house all the time. I think that these people like Bill Gates, they are trying their hardest to come up with ways to replace everything we do. Why? Because they want to control everything. They want us all to be little robots running around doing the jobs they want us to do. And I think they're going to do their best. Now, none of this is going to happen. I don't think. If you're listening to this show, I don't see any of this happening in any of our lifetimes. I don't. The technology is not there. It's not good enough. Maybe somewhere down the road, somebody will even stop it. But I think in 100 years from now, I think things are going to really change a lot. I really do. I think just about everything we do in our daily lives is going to be 100% difference, somewhere down the road, not in our lifetimes. So maybe it does matter to you and maybe it doesn't. But I do think that AI and computer technology is going to continue to grow, and it's going to replace us all, no matter what your job is, somewhere down the road. And Mandy replying to Donna, she says, Rosie from the Jetsons. Yep, that's right. And Pam says, I wish a robot would change my sheets and make my bed. You know what? Funny that you say that, Pam. There is a robot that does that. There is a robot that does that. I watched a whole video on it a year or so ago, where it's a machine and it goes around your bed. It's up against the wall, it frames your bed. And when you get up out of bed, it will take your sheets off. Surprisingly enough, it removes the sheets from your bed, and it somehow grabs onto these new sheets that you've already put in place and puts the sheets on your bed. So don't think it can't be done. It would probably be a huge pain, but it's interesting watching. You have to look up the video. It's pretty crazy. I don't expect that to be a household item by any means. A long way to go for that. So I know we don't have a lot of time left. I want to talk a little bit more about, and speaking of AI, I was reading this yesterday. I thought you guys might find this interesting. In Kansas, they're going to have some buses with AI facial recognition. I could see that coming to St. Louis, speaking of AI, because they're having such a problem in parts of Kansas to where people are coming on the buses committing crimes, sleeping because they're homeless, destroying, vandalism. So they're going to have AI now equipped buses. And when you come into a bus, the AI is going to use facial recognition to see who you are. And it's going to instantly know, do you have warrants? Are you a missing person? Are you somebody who is suspected of being trafficked? Are you somebody who's going to come onto our bus and commit a crime? It is crazy, but AI, I'm telling you, it's going to be everywhere and sooner in some aspects than we think. They're already using AI in stores and you don't even know it. You have no idea. When you walk in a store door, there's a camera there at some stores and it looks at you, and it's not connecting you with necessarily arrest warrants or things like that, but it's connecting you and remembering who you are, because if you steal, it's going to come back and find you. AI is taking over whether we want it to or not. I don't like the concept of it, but it's happening slowly but surely. And there's the good and the bad. Is yes, this is a way for buses to recognize people who are missing and potentially rescue those people or bring them to safety. And of course, it's going to make the bus system a lot safer. A lot of people will be walking, right, instead of taking the bus. But that is something that's going on. So lastly, I want to talk, Pam says, I believe we already some sort of facial recognition. You're definitely in the facial recognition system. Anyone that has a state ID or a driver's license is entered into the facial recognition system. The minute you sit down at the DMV and they take your photo, that photo is uploaded into the facial recognition system. That's how they know who we all are and connect it to our driver's licenses and eventually to our DNA. So that part hasn't connected yet, but your facial recognition, you're already in the system. It already knows who you are. It already has your address. It has your phone number. It has your driving record. All of that's loaded by the DMV. I've been telling you that's not new. That's been happening for a few years now. As soon as facial recognition started, somebody had the bright idea to say, oh, Well, how do we get all these people in the facial recognition system and know who they are? Well, what does everybody do? They all sit down for a driver's license or a state ID. So if you have a driver's license, state ID, you're in that facial recognition system. It's tied directly to your ID. And that is a 100% fact. I promise you. Promise you that. I've done a lot of research on it. So I want to talk before we head out, and I don't have too much more time. I know I'm pushing my limits of the show. I did a 1 hour show. It used to be 2 hours, but I ended up talking for an hour and a half anyway. So this is important because, as you guys know, I had these lung nodules, and I've been seeing a cancer specialist, a lung cancer specialist, just because when you have lung nodules, depending on what type they are, especially like mine, where they were growing, which I think they've since stopped growing. What happens is you go in front of a tumor board. They send your scans, your CT scans, your PET scan, all this stuff to a tumor board. Well, then the tumor board together decide what are they going to do with you, And so my recommendation was to get a biopsy, which is how I ended up coming into this lung cancer specialist's office, who I'm going to see again, of course, this week. Probably for the last time. I think my situation is stabilized. But what happens is that when I was in his office, they go through that risk assessment, and it's all about smoking. Have you ever smoked? Do you have a family history of lung cancer? I've never smoked a day in my life, not anything, other than secondhand smoke, a barbecue, a campfire. No smoke has entered my lungs. So, okay, then that's a huge check off the check mark. Okay, well, if you've never smoked, it's very unlikely that you have lung cancer. And then it comes to, family history. Okay, well, for me, I have no family history either. Okay, well, that's another big check mark. So it's very unlikely for somebody like myself to have lung cancer. And then I read this study yesterday, and I'm like, well, darn it, I have eaten a lot of junk food in my lifetime. I'm busy. I don't have time. I do cook, and I try to cook healthy things. And here lately, I've cooked healthier things. But this study, it came out of Boulder, Colorado, at the Anschutz Medical Center there, which is a great school, by the way. They have determined, they did a study, a really good study. I read the whole report on it, that if you are somebody who consumes ultra processed food, chips, soda, cakes, pies, cookies, ultra processed food, seed oils, all those different types of things, that raises the risk of you getting lung cancer by 41%. 41%, which is just insane. 41%. That's crazy, isn't it? And it's hard for me to believe you could never smoke a day in your life, and still your lung cancer risk raises by 41%. And it was crazy to read the study, thinking about all the Americans, and people really across the world, but Americans in particular, who go through the grocery store, and most of the food we eat is not real food, ultra processed food. And they even talk about lunch meats. A lot of people think lunch meats are safe. Lunch meats, unless you're getting them at the Mennonite store, like I do, are ultra processed. They take meat, they take preservatives and additives and all this junk, and they put it in a big blender, form it into a meat loaf, and then they slice it up, and that's your deli meat. Don't even get me started about deli cheese. And you can go to places like I do, this Mennonite store, where it's very little processing, very little additives, healthy stuff, but that's the only place to get this, healthier lunch meat. Donna says rock dust can cause it. Yeah, there's rock dust, if you're a miner and you're down in the mines dealing with that, asbestos, there's other things that can certainly lead to lung cancer. But whoever thought that it would be your diet, your processed foods? I thought that was absolutely crazy. And that study took into account, of course, smokers. So it was a pretty serious wake up call, I think, to me, and hopefully to a lot of other people, that you don't have to smoke to get lung cancer. And then it starts coming together, the bigger picture, why lung cancer is the number one leading cause of cancer deaths in the United States, and even amongst non-smokers. And you wonder, well, how can that be? And according to this study, the reasoning behind it is because you're eating junk. And when you're eating junk, you're not getting nutrition. And because of that lack of nutritional value, your body is defenseless. I take a multivitamin. A lot of people don't. And, I'm trying to eat healthier foods, but I'll tell you, a lot of people are busy. It's not always easy to eat healthy foods, but you're doing yourself a real disservice if you're not taking care of yourself, at least supplementing with some type of something nutritional to get those nutrients in your body. We are depleting our bodies of nutrients. That's what it comes down to. We are completely depleting our bodies of nutrients, and we're allowing that disease to sneak in. Pam says, well, that is it. Sounds like we need to do a class action lawsuit so we can get our $6.29. What is it for, Pam? What's the oh, for your lunch meat? Pam says, we have been watching a show with Henry Winkler. It is crazy to hear some of the things they put in milk back in the 30s to make it white. Yes, Pam, you are absolutely so right. The things when we go to the grocery store, it's just poison. I'm sorry to say, but it's poison. People don't understand me, my own family. Like, why do you care so much about going to farmers markets? I drove, 45 minutes each way yesterday to this farmers market to get these special corn that I really wanted. And so it's like, that's the new me, going to farmers markets, no matter what the travel distance is, because I am not going to be eating this poison at the grocery store. I'm not going to do it. Tammy says, and it costs more to eat healthy. Yes, and it shouldn't. That's absolutely right. I've not seen the Henry Winkler show. Please share that with me, Pam. You've got my information. Send me a message. I would love to know, because I've not seen that. I had no idea. And it shouldn't be that healthy foods cost more. It shouldn't be that way. It is that way. It shouldn't be that way. And so anyway, so I'm going to move on. I know I've got couple other things to talk about. I know you guys are probably ready for me to shut up. I don't normally talk about this much in the show, but these are some things that I think are very, very important. One last thing when it comes to health that I want to talk about, then I'm going to tell you where the alien bodies are buried. We'll talk more about that next week. 20 foods that parasites hate. I absolutely do believe 100%, I've been saying this for a couple of years now, since the COVID came around, that our bodies are sick because of parasites. They are. And almost, I'm not going to say, I'm going to be very careful with my wording here, or they'll take my show down in a flash. A lot of illnesses could be potentially contributed to parasitic involvement. How about that? Donna says processed foods is a big reason for EPI. I'm not sure what EPI is. You can put that in the comment and I'll read it, because I'm not sure what EPI is. So 20 foods that parasites hate. Think about that. Remember this little supplement that I was showing you guys? This is wormwood, black walnut, whole cloves, and so much more. It's got 11 different things in it. Most of them are on this list. And so this list, these are 20 things parasites hate. Apple cider vinegar, barberry, which is also berberine. All of this is in this package I have, by the way. Cayenne pepper, cloves, coconut oil, fennel seeds, garlic, ginger, lemon. Because all of these, they either acidify the gut and get rid of parasites, or they kill parasites in some way for some reason, through alkalinization and so on. So I'm going to read that again. Apple cider vinegar, barberry, which is berberine, black walnuts, right here, cayenne pepper, cloves, coconut oil, fennel seeds, garlic, ginger, lemon. Sweet wormwood does too. It's also in my supplement here. This is that supplement I told you guys about a while back. Maybe this is the reason why those nodules in my lymph nodes stopped growing. I don't know. I'm really not sure. They were growing, all of a sudden has stopped. So we'll see what happens next week. So I wanted to throw those out there because it's important for us to remember these. I'm going to post these on social media later. Very quickly before we head out, I'm not going to talk a lot about this because we're way out of time. We'll pick this up, next week, maybe next Friday. We'll talk about it. We all talk about the aliens. Where are the bodies? I'm going to read through this list really quick, because I had this conversation, gosh, I don't know, 15 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, with a guy that I know who was a general who worked for the J8 team. And he had very high security level clearance, as high as it gets. And he was always looking for the alien bodies. So he told me they're all at Wright Air Force Base. And it's been on my mind since that time. Pam, what is the name of your supplement? It's by a company called Dedica, Dedica. And on the front of it, it says wormwood, black walnut, whole cloves, and more, 11-in-1 supplements. And I'll tell you, this thing has worked absolute wonders for me. Absolute wonders. And, I haven't seen any of that weird stuff that people talk about when it comes to parasites. I'm not seeing parasites anywhere. Nothing along those lines. Some people say, oh, I've got parasites crawling out of my nose. I'm flushing them down the toilet. Nothing like that has occurred for me. However, I do think that something is definitely going on because I was in so much pain. And I do think this helped. And when I stopped taking this for a couple days, because I just got busy, I was back in pain again. And this is it's more than just parasites. It's for a lot of other things too. So I want to read this list really quick. Let's see here. Donna says, I can never say that word. Diamashus, the earth. I've got some at home here, as a matter of fact, 'cause I use it for the chicken coop. Food grade prevents parasites. They even feed it to cattle. Yeah, I give it to the chickens. You never can say that word, the Diamatus earth, something like that. You can find it at any Rural King, Tractor Supply, Buckeye, whatever is in your area. You can find it. You can certainly order it online also. So here's a list of where some of the bodies are allegedly kept. This is kind of funny. I'll post this later just for fun. How many bodies? There's a lot of alien bodies hiding out in our country. So the most obvious, Roswell, Mexico, Astor, Mexico. There's 12 alien bodies. Let's see. It says south of Laredo, Texas. There's a place in Mexico where there's one body. Spitsbergen, Norway, 2 bodies. Ely, Nevada, 16. Get 16 alien bodies in Ely, Nevada. And 3 bodies in Albuquerque, New Mexico, somewhere else in southwest Arizona from 1953. There was some type of a crash with 1 body. Kingman, Arizona, they're holding 1 alien body. The city of Laredo, Texas, 4 alien bodies. Johannesburg, South Africa, they have 5 alien bodies. Let's see, I'm just going to read the list. Dutton, Montana, Brighton, England, Carlsbad, New Mexico, Holman Air Force Base in New Mexico, Fort Riley in Kansas has quite a few. Northwest Arizona, there were 5 crashes. It says Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio area, and 1 UFO was removed. This is some information that was allegedly recovered when Donald Trump took office, is where this has come from, that was allegedly leaked to the American people in an effort to disclose the truth, is where this came from. Morocco, the Sahara Desert, Northwest Arizona. This was from an incident that took place in 1973. There's 5 bodies being held. Somewhere in the Australian desert, there's a facility that has 4 alien bodies. Southwest Ohio, Tabasco, Mexico. Never heard of that. Bolivia, believe it or not, I don't know why this is on here, but it says Bolivia has no bodies, so I don't know why they're including it. There are Afghanistan has alien bodies. South Africa has alien bodies. It's kind of interesting. Siberia, there's 9. I don't know what to make of this list. If you looked at the comprehensive list, it goes over dates. It goes over what took place, what type of incident. Most of these were from a long time ago, from 1947 up through 1989. I don't see anything on the list since that time. Now, again, this is supposed to be a leak, that someone in our government who wants the full disclosure to be known about UFOs, about aliens, leaked this information online. They want people to know these are how many bodies have been recovered. And these are the different facilities they're located in, the different cities they're located in. I don't know what to think about it. I would love to have full disclosure to know what's really going on, especially now with all this talk, which I think is just a bunch of BS, but talking about this big hostile mothership, that's going to be coming through in November. And Donna says, I don't believe they're aliens. I just believe they're from another country, deformed humans. Maybe, Donna, I think they're future humans is what I think, that have come back for whatever reason to study us or see where we went wrong somewhere down the line. I don't know. But it was interesting to read this study and read this report, because I do believe aliens exist. I do believe UFOs exist. I do. You couldn't convince me otherwise. And I'm not going to show you. We don't have time. We had some videos to show. I'll show you those next week, some different UFO videos. I don't know what to think of the videos, because there's so much AI anymore. It's like, how do you really know what you're looking at or what even to believe? I know I don't know. You probably don't know either. But I thought this was interesting, and I wish they would leak a little bit more information, because there's so much more I would like to know. It's one of the things that I think that the Donald Trump administration promised us, not only the Epstein list, but that we would have some disclosure. What were those drones that we saw not only along the East Coast, but all over the world, really, and all over the United States? What were they? Why don't we see them anymore? Remember when we were seeing orbs everywhere? I saw one myself. Stacy, I don't know if you're here, but I think you may have seen something. And a lot of us saw those orbs. What were they? Why don't we see them anymore? Was it just a science experiment and by Billy Gates? We don't know. We don't know. but we'll find out. Hopefully somebody needs to be talking to us about the aliens and what the truth is, but they're not. Donald Trump, since he's been in office, has not said one word about aliens. Nothing. We've not had one single. Remember how we were going through all of those congressional hearings about aliens? This year, we've not had any under Donald Trump. It makes me wonder what's going on. We need to get back to those congressional hearings. We need to talk more about the UAPs and the UFOs. I know there's a lot more things to talk about, but we can't not let it go by the wayside. All right, guys, I've talked way too long. I'm sure you guys are all tired of hearing me today, but we will be back. We'll talk a little bit more next week. I will not be here again Monday or Wednesday, but I will be here Tuesday. I plan to be anyway. If something changes, I will let everyone know, but I'll be here the rest of the week. Hopefully Colonel Joe Adams can join us one day next week. That's my goal. That's my plan. He's got some new internet service, so we'll see how that's working out for him. Now, yesterday when we ended the show, I promised I was going to show that Tulsi Gabbard video that I showed at the beginning of the show yesterday. I totally forgot. When I ended the show, I'm like, nah, I'm done. I'm out of here. Totally forgot. And then a couple people messaged me. They're like, I was waiting for that and you didn't show it. So I'm going to show it today at the end of the show if you want to stick around and see her outing the deep state. Pretty interesting video. They got her in a lot of trouble, by the way. Thank you, Tammy. And so I do hope you guys all had a really great weekend, or have a really great weekend. See, I'm already thinking about Monday. I'm going to be out in the garden most of the weekend. I got a little bit of work to do, mostly gardening work. But I do hope you guys enjoy your weekend. I'm going to play this video for you guys. I will see you all on Tuesday. And see you then. Have a good weekend. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap.
Who actually runs the government, in your experience?
Not who you think it is. It's not even people who we vote for. When you look at what happened when President Biden had that infamous debate with President Trump, it exposed the reality that many of us have known for a long time, which is that President Biden has not been the guy calling the shots. He has not been the guy making the decisions, nor has it been Kamala Harris, for that matter, nor will it be if she is elected president. It is this cabal of, the Democrat elite, the woke warmongers, made up of the likes of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and, Tony Blinken and Jake Sullivan and, people who are in the military-industrial complex, people who profit from us being in a constant state of war. It is those in the administrative state, in the national security state, who derive more authorities and ability to take away our liberty when we are in a heightened state of crisis or war. It is their friends and billionaires and people in media who all derive their power from being able to have a figurehead that essentially they can control.